All right, good evening again, everybody. We're going to go over the amendments to the Constitution. Depending how time goes, I only have time to record 15 minutes at a time via the software, so this might get broken up into two videos. So we'll see how we progress. So rolling right in the amendments, you did a reading on the Bill of Rights and the other key amendments, so make sure you reference the worksheets when you're doing your preparation. Remember I said I'm only going to emphasize those 10 Bill of Rights and those 5 other amendments as outlined in your worksheets. But First Amendment talks about different freedoms. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of petition. I'm going to go through each of these freedoms pretty quickly. But the first freedom to address is freedom of religion. And there's 2 main clauses here. The first is called what we call the Establishment Clause. And you can see there, Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of religion. Basically, they're saying we're not going to have a church of the United States. We're not going to make everybody go to one church. And kind of by that same token, we're not going to favor one religion over another. And we're not going to punish people who do practice a different religion than us. That being said, we cannot pass any laws that aid any religion. So where that kind of comes into play a lot is, federal government really can't give money to any churches or charities associated with those churches. The second clause is the Free Exercise Clause, meaning the government cannot prohibit the free exercise thereof for a religion. So the government cannot prohibit or interfere with religious practice without good reason. So they can't prevent people from practicing their faith. Next freedom in the First Amendment is the freedom of speech, and this refers to all forms of communication, so verbal, digital, talking on the phone, email, kind of you name it. It's good in a republic like the United States that we can exchange free ideas and opinions, and I think this helps with transparency too. We can kind of hear from the news what's going on in the world around us, in our government. We can hear different viewpoints. This is not a completely absolute. Obviously, safety comes into play. So, if somebody went into a movie theater and started yelling fire or bomb, things like that, or you go on an airplane, you can't yell bomb on an airplane. So that right is not absolute. Additionally, we have freedom of the press. So no censorship. So, we can't block, our government's not going to block what newspapers are saying. Regarding the news, and that includes radios, magazines, books, TV, film. You see those. This is good. It helps keep our politicians accountable for their actions, and it gives us a variety of information and opinions. So kind of lets us decide the truth, and we kind of do that when we think like historians. Additionally, we have freedom of assembly, so the government cannot prevent citizens the right to peacefully assemble. Now, if people are getting less than peaceful, obviously the government can step in, and obviously safety comes into play as well. And just give an example: if people are completely blocking Michigan Avenue downtown Chicago, the police, in theory, have a right to break that up because that's interfering with safety. People do need to go about their day as well. Additionally, you can petition the government. So you kind of see a funny petition here that was floating around the internet a few years back where Texas was trying to withdraw from the United States of America. So anybody can create a petition online. Again, you can also hand out a paper petition, and you can send it to your congressmen, your senators. You can send them directly to the White House. But the government cannot prevent you from basically writing the government and saying, "Hey, I have this idea," or "I disagree with this policy." Okay, so moving forward to our Second Amendment. First and Second Amendments, I think, are the most debated amendments. How far do these freedoms or rights extend? Second Amendment deals with the right to bear arms. So you can see the text there: a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. So this kind of goes back to those revolutionary days when a lot of the military revolved around those local militias, those state militias. And these were part-time soldiers, Minutemen, who needed to be ready in a minute's notice. So obviously they needed to have weapons to protect themselves. Um, Many people think, this is one extreme or the other, that, oh, this is so out of date, or yeah, I can own any gun I want. So kind of based on your interpretation, I think we'll continue to see this change throughout our lifetimes. I have a quote from Minuteman up there, Captain John Parker. He was one of the first Minutemen to fight the British at Lexington and Concord. He said, "Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." So just kind of going back to that militia mentality. Third Amendment, we already talked about, no quartering of troops. So again, in times of peace, we're never going to make U.S. citizens house our service members in their houses. Fourth Amendment protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. They have to have probable cause. So they have to have reason that a crime has probably been committed. Search warrants must be issued, and they have to say, who or what is being searched or taken, and where the search is going to occur. There is kind of an exception to this, just in common practice, that obviously, in an emergency situation, law enforcement can enter your house. Obviously, if they see somebody running your house with a gun or they hear screams, they can enter the premises. Fifth Amendment deals with other protections in the court. So you have a right to a grand jury. We didn't really talk much about a grand jury, but in short, a grand jury is basically a group of jurors who sit down and listen to hear, is there enough evidence to take on a case. That's for criminal cases. So you do have that right. We're not going to talk about that a whole lot. You do have a right to plead the fifth, which means you have freedom from self-incrimination. So basically, you can't be forced to testify against yourself in court. Remember, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So you don't have to prove yourself guilty. It is the government's job to prove you guilty, to prove that you're guilty in a criminal court. You have freedom from double jeopardy. So you can't be tried for the same crime twice. Now that's like the same crime on the same day in the same place. So it's not like you can rob a bank one day and then go back and rob it the next day. Those are two separate crimes. And then kind of an additional clause in there is the government can't take away your private land for public use. So let's say they wanted to build a new interstate highway and they needed to take some homes in Kenilworth for that. If they do take your homes for that land for the common good, you have to be rightfully compensated for that. Sixth and Seventh Amendments deal with more courtroom rights. So the sixth one is you have a right to an attorney. You have a right to a speedy and public trial in criminal cases. So we don't have secret courts here that happen, in the basements of buildings where nobody can see it. They're public trials, and they're supposed to be speedy trials, so you're not sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting for your trial to happen. Additionally, you have in Amendment 7, you have right to trial by a jury in civil cases too. So the Sixth Amendment was dealing with the right to a lawyer in criminal cases. In civil cases, so that's if you're suing somebody or you're being sued, you do have a right to a trial by jury there. So it wouldn't be a judge-only court case. Eighth Amendment deals with freedom from cruel and unusual punishment. So we talked about this a little bit in class today. This is the idea that we don't cut people's hands off for stealing in this country. We don't torture people, things like that. That also includes you can't have excessive fines. So obviously, if somebody doesn't have money, you can't charge them $1 billion because they'll never be able to pay that off. Ninth Amendment basically states that you have rights that aren't listed in the Constitution, and it's not like aha, I gotcha. Like somebody can't take away rights away from you because they're not listed out in the Constitution. So just because it's not stated in the Constitution doesn't mean that you do not have that right. So you have more rights than are listed in the Constitution, and you just got to use common sense. And 10th Amendment, States' Rights Amendment, and this basically says any power is not given explicitly so spelled out to the federal government belonging to the states. We call these reserve powers. So, example of this is nowhere in the Constitution did it really call for education. So, at least back at that time when the Constitution was written, education was left up to the state and local governments. So we'll have another video coming soon with Amendments 11 through 27, just to give you some background information.